Well, hello, folks. The video for June the 3rd, 2018, with Roger Harkness is entitled The Peaceful Poet's Poem. And by the way, June the 3rd is not only my brother's birthday, but as you see if you watch the current video for June the 2nd, it's also my friend Aristo's birthday. But anyway, Roger, I'm glad to have you back with me. And this time we're going to actually share one of your favorite poems that you've written, and you're going to you have the technology and the know-how to put that into this video, which I do not have. But talk to us about what you do and how you came to write the poem, and whatever else you want to talk about, and then we'll go from there.
Well, at the time that I wrote this poem, I was in the Navy. It was around 88, 87, sometime around there. And it was the Baker scandal. And if you're young, you probably don't know what we're talking about because it was back then. But at that time, it was a big thing where Jim Baker, I think his name was Jim.
Yes, yeah. It was.
He raped his secretary, and Playboy did the article, and I think that was Playboy. That was their biggest selling magazine at that time. I think it was literally their biggest selling magazine because everybody bought the magazine just to read that article. Well,
he was, of course, a Christian televangelist.
Yeah.
Had his own, programs and stuff. So he was well known, and that would have been quite a scandal.
Yeah, because it was pretty big. I mean, this is how big it was. Is they actually built a theme park for their own evangelical church. I mean, that's how big they were. They actually had their own theme park, and they were pretty big. So that was just like
it was Tammy Faye and Jim Baker.
Yep.
I remember.
A lot of people were really upset, and I read that, and I was just steaming angry. And I wrote this poem, and I wrote it in 15 minutes, literally. I just write down on a piece of paper. And it's like about 4 pages long, and it took me a long time to record it. That's how long it is. It's about 5 minutes worth. So for me, it's the best poem I've ever written because it's completely natural. I didn't create any of it. It just came right out of me onto a piece of paper. So
well, you know that I'm a poet as well, and sometimes when you have inspiration, the words just flow. In fact, I have trouble sometimes reading my writing. I'm writing it down so quickly. It's like it's being dictated to me.
Yep, exactly. So that's why it's, but really if you read the poem, there's nothing in there about Tammy Faye Baker, but it is, you're talking to evangelists, that's really what it's about, you could tell, but it could be applied to just about anything. But that's why I consider it to be my best poem, because one, it's my longest poem, and it just was pure natural. None of it, I didn't make up none of it. It just completely came right out of me. And now that I got that done, all the other poems that I do online will be a lot easier because they're a lot shorter. That one was a lot of work because it was pretty long.
Yeah, I've seen some of your shorter ones. Yeah, it does. I mean, when you're in the groove, like I said, things come very, very easy, and they're generally the ones that are the most inspirational.
Yeah. So I'm not. Some poets can just read their poems out with gusto and bravo, and probably their poems may be not the greatest in the world, but it's the way they read them that makes them so great. And I just don't have that talent. I wished I did, but I really did my best on this one. And so when you watch it, I hope you appreciate it.
Well, as I've said in some of my other videos, my first poem as an adult was I was all alone, no friend by me, tossed and troubled on life's cruel sea. I wanted to run, but where could I go? I couldn't escape from myself, I know. Flee, yes, flee, I'll follow the sun, but where could I go? Where could I run? Wherever I'd go, I'd still have me, tossed and troubled on life's cruel sea.
That's pretty good.
And I mean, that's just the beginning of it. It's much longer than that. But anyway, and I have a friend of mine named Robin who wrote a poem called Masters of Love, which I also memorized. And she shared it with me when she first wrote it. She made a few minor changes after that, but it's still an amazing poem.
Uh-huh.
I'm not gonna take up your time quoting that one, but I could also go off on that one, and I could probably do the whole thing actually.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. I think everybody has written a poem or two. Almost everybody has. I mean, and unfortunately, you usually write that poem when you're angry, when you're hurt, when you're confused.
When the emotions are high.
Yeah, and then of course when you're in love, But
that too.
hardly do we write poems about normal life, But that's the that's the talent, when you can just write about birds and trees and things like that. But I think everybody's written a poem, and it is a special thing, and it's probably more special to you than it is to everybody else, because what caused you to write it. But then again, some people will read it and it means something completely different to them, but yet it's still very important to them. So you're not always writing for yourself. A lot of times you're writing for other people and you just don't realize it. Just that right person reads it and it just means something special to them.
Well, go ahead.
I had written a small poem, and I had lost it, but it was a real small poem about how men become angry and how women cry. And it was just a really short little poem, and I sold it to a women's magazine, and the editor called me up, and it just meant so much to her. I mean, she was almost in tears. And it was just, I don't know, about like 6 or 7 lines. It was just a real short poem, but sometimes your poems mean something more to others than it does to yourself,
Well, things hit the spot. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, it depends on where you are emotionally when you're reading it, as well as the writer that's writing it, where they are emotionally. So it is a connection at the emotional level.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes, to me, emotional and spiritual work really close together. The intellectual can sort of have plates and walls separating it from the heart, so to speak, because it's all in the head. And that's what's wrong with the world. Too many things are all in the head and they never reach the heart.
Yeah.
Most of our politicians are that way. And, I have to ask you this. What did the Jim Bakker scandal do to you? I mean, I'm assuming you were, in belief, a Christian.
Yeah, at that time I was investigating Christianity pretty strongly. Yeah, I joined several different churches and stuff at that time. So
okay, so yeah, it sounds like you've gone the gamut in spiritual digging, as I have, and I consider myself a Christian, but also a Hindu, a Buddhist, a Muslim, even a Messianic Jew. Although I think Judaism is probably the most doctored of all the religions. They've all been doctored to some degree, but Judaism more than any other, with the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is a nasty thing. I mean.
Yeah, it was. I'm trying to think of where the Hindu scriptures actually originated from, but I can't think of it at the top of my head. But they were basically copied from another set of scriptures and kind of recreated somewhat, and so they're not really.
Well, all of our religions have been created by men and women, mostly men. But I'm sure there have been some women seers and prophetesses and stuff that have played a key role, and some even used a masculine name because they couldn't have gotten published as a woman. That's how prejudiced and ridiculous our culture has been at times. Only men were allowed to be ministers and priests, and they were the only ones that were seen as having any value. And in Muslim culture, even to this very day, women have little value, which is a sad thing. And that's not absolute true. There's always exceptions.
Yeah, like women have to, in the Muslim tradition, the women have to sit at the back or in another room behind while the men are all up front. And so, yeah, that ain't quite right. But
and the women aren't allowed in public without covering their face and all sorts of other things. So There's
Yeah.
there's a lot of, I mean, I could get off on lots of tangents here, but this is your video, so I've got to let you talk.
Well, no, this is your video. I'm just here. But yeah, I was. It was really disappointing to me, and I think that's, nowadays I'm older, so I wouldn't put somebody up on a pedestal or anything like that. But I was a lot younger then, so it wouldn't be uncommon for me to like put somebody up there where they don't belong and believe in them, and then just be destroyed when they've done something completely, what he had done.
Well, of course, the Jimmy Swaggart scandal was also devastating for a lot of people. He was even, I think, more famous than Jim Baker, in my opinion, and he's still doing his thing.
Yeah, I just read an article about this evangelist who wants another airplane. He wants his followers to pay for him so he can buy another airplane. It's like, this is crazy. And unfortunately, yeah, people will do it. They'll send them their money. They'll go without a meal or their medicine, or they will just go behind on the rent, or lose their car just to pay this person this money so that they can have their airplane.
Because they consider it giving it to God.
Right. They think they're going to get blessed for it. And, well, they might, but still, that's not really the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah, I mean, I used to, give 10% of my income plus offerings. I don't do that anymore. I mean, I live on a limited income since they stole my house. But anyway, that's another subject also.
Yeah. I think when you give to the homeless or the hungry or whatever it is you give to that's actually helping people, then that you're actually giving to the church. That's the way I look at it. And here in the Bible Belt, there's got to be a church every 2 blocks. You could just drive down the street and every 2 blocks there's a church. And you got to wonder, how does all that get paid for? And that's got to be a lot of money, to support all these churches. So.
Well, I grew up in a town, as I said, of 7,000 to 8,000 people as a boy, and there were at least, I never actually took the time to count them, but I bet you there were at least a dozen churches. There were 2 churches. One was right across the street from where I grew up, and the other one was just five doors up the street, and they were both Reformed churches. And there were 3 Reformed churches in that one town. 3 different Reformed churches.
Yeah. They usually break up about the Trinity is the big thing that usually breaks them all up. They will just get so nitpicky about that. They'll just disown each other over it. It's just really crazy.
Yeah, I mean, people really hold their political and religious viewpoints with a lot of emotion, and very easy to get involved in non-discussion discussions. When I say non-discussion discussion, I mean arguments over who's right. And it's not about who's right.
Yeah,
we each have our perception based on what we've been brainwashed with and our life experience.
Yeah, what I like to say is, no, we don't really know. It's just our opinion, and it's really because we're all guessing. All of us here are guessing. Nobody really knows. We're all just guessing here. So, to hate somebody over it, the difference of an opinion is that's really insane, and I don't really think it's that important to God what we think about the Trinity. I don't really think He cares. So we should deal with it.
Like I keep saying, I think God wants us simply to get around to loving each other and to stop thinking inside of a small box and knock down the walls of all of our boxes.
Right.
And communicate with each other. Actually listen.
Right.
Not convince, listen.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. And I decided to record this poem not simply because it's what I consider to be my best, but because I was thinking about, self-righteousness. That is probably the one thing that angers me more than anything in the world, and that is self-righteousness. It just really gets me. And there's just a lot of it in this world today, probably more of it now than when I was a child. It's just gotten to be so ridiculous with this PC correctness and stuff. I mean, you just say the wrong thing and you can be accused of being a racist. You can be accused of being a misogynist. You can be accused of all kinds of being a sexist, of all kinds of different things, you know. Be called a hater or whatever just by saying the wrong thing. And it's just, we're so into judging other people and we're so not into judging ourselves. It's really, so that's why I figured it was pretty important for me to get this one out. And plus, again, it was my toughest one. So if I get that out of the way, the others will be easier.
Well, Jesus, as we know from what's written in the Bible, he called the Pharisees, which were the self-righteous segment of the religious leaders in his generation, he called them a generation of vipers and an offspring of Satan.
Yeah, he gave them hell.
And he says you'll cross heaven and earth to make a proselyte, and when you convert them, they're twofold more a child of Satan than you are yourself. You know, they make things worse instead of better, in other words.
Right.
And that's taken Jesus's words as given to us in the Bible.
Right. Yeah. And
it's the Pharisees that formed the modern Jewry. They're the ones that went and trained the Ashkenazis and gave them the protocols of the elders of Zion, which is demonic. I mean, it's really bad.
Yeah.
And they've sucked in so many fundamentalist Christians in our generation.
Right.
That Schofield stuff is the way it's supposed to be, and it's a grand deception.
Yeah. That's why there was another person. Shoot, I'm so bad with names. But he explained a lot of that in his videos, where Jesus actually had to die to replace the law what you're talking about, the law. That had to be replaced, and it couldn't be done unless Jesus died. He explained all that in his videos. And
I watched an amazing video last night. I go to a group on Friday nights, and we often watch a movie and have discussion. Although I left right after the movie stopped playing to go hear my son play, but the movie was about. I don't have the name of it right in front of me now. But it was about an atheist who became an atheist because his youngest son, died of leukemia. And he got really, really mad at God, became an atheist, and wrote best-selling books and was in debates on TV. And it was an interesting movie. And then he had a near-death experience where he actually died. He was pronounced dead. He was dead for 4 minutes. And during those 4 minutes, he went to the other side and met his 4-year-old son, who says, "Dad, let the light shine." I mean, I think that's what the title of it was, "Let the Light Shine."
Wow.
And he went back, and his controllers were trying to get him to keep the atheist theme going. And he actually knelt down and turned his life over to God and totally changed his life. Anyway, I'm not going to go into the movie, but it was a tearjerker. I mean, I was wiping tears from my eyes because it was so poignant, the story itself.
Yeah, I think this atheist agenda is actually being pushed by the powers that be. I think.
I totally agree.
And I can understand atheists because the churches and the way they are and the baker's candle and all the other things. But if you go back and you read the Gospels and what Jesus actually taught, it's like you got to look at the churches and say, what? This is the churches and this is Jesus, and it's just so different.
Absolutely.
Different.
So many of the churches have become so legalistic that they actually demonstrate the very things Jesus was warning us about.
Right. Yeah, they've become the Pharisees.
Exactly. Or worse than even the Pharisees.
Yeah.
So anyway, we've gone about 20 minutes already into this video, a little bit less. But do you want me to leave you just to, you know, at what point do you want to break off, and then we'll add your poem at the end? Do you think that's a good way to do it, or would you rather do it a different way?
Well, you can go ahead and play it now.
Hello, this is Minister Peaceful Poet, and the name of this poem is God Person. Hey God Person, what you create today, and where the hell were you yesterday? Telling me I would be more successful and happier being your way, but I'm not complaining. And what are you going to do about the starving? Will you bother to show them how? They don't have the donations I have to offer. And on the last day when God asks you, how are you going to say, what mountains have you moved? What storm have you tamed? Have you helped others, or have you just helped yourself? Receiving fame from the fools who follow you, they're just as blind as you. And I'm not understanding why people aren't watching clouds pass by, birds flying high, trees don't grow when they bow down to people like you. Veins of the path lie beneath the skin, and if people would just look within, the grass we walk on without caring to see can show us about you and me. Look eye to eye and see every side of a round world. Each truth has a different color, all colors feel differently, each feeling has a path going the same direction. Reaching up, we can reach out, learning what it's all about. Darkness is seeing your own hunger and not caring about another. With hearts shut off and turned inward, we can't look at the pain of another. Without understanding, we just hurt each other. But you're taken care of, aren't you? With your heart drunken with all their attention, your pockets filled with all their money, you're a happy, successful man, at peace, giving yourself to God. You're rewarded for sharing with us the plan. Bullshit. You've only given yourself to vanity, man, and looking up to you to fill their hunger, they're too blind to see the scam. I'm not one to criticize, God knows I'm not a perfect man, but I do claim to understand. You want to follow Jesus? Give all you own to the poor, and wear the shoes of the homeless. Jesus had nothing and showed us everything. He truly belonged to the Father, didn't have to bother asking for anything, and with the help of broadcasting equipment, his words reached around the world. Under many tons of pressure, he sweat tears of blood. He did, but you don't. He cared, you won't. To claim you follow him isn't fair. You want to help? Stop taking our money. Stop putting us down. Jesus didn't, and you shouldn't. And without knowing the name of the Son of Man, Buddha followed his words more than you. And won't you be surprised when Jesus says to you, I never knew you. Blessed is the one who tries to follow the way of Jesus, but isn't always able to. And cursed is the one who tells us to, but doesn't. Forgiving us of our sins, who's going to forgive you? And Jesus had no credit account, retirement fund, or limousine to take him about. And without all that, you say he saved the world? Or did he just save you? Preaching his words, you've obtained all that, and when are you going to give it back? Why should you have all that? Who's going to save the poor from you? We don't need more people like you. Do you really know the truth? Do you care? Do you really want to help? Doing the work of the gospel? Stop your preaching. Pay your taxes like Jesus told you to. Get down here and help out. Have you ever wondered why Jesus was a friend to your sinners? Why he was an enemy to you? Instead of fessing up, you had to try to shut him up, and after you had him nailed up, he asked the Father to forgive you. Even one of your sinners at his side, Jesus was not ashamed. He even took him with him. And judge yourself honestly. You must think you're better than me. Jesus didn't see it that way, and why should you? What is the truth? To see each other eye to eye. What is the plan? To understand. What is the way? To give each other a helping hand. Does it hurt you for me to put you down? Now don't do it to me. Eye to eye is the way. Together we can all make it. By sharing, we are taking all the hurt and pain and hunger away. It could be a good day seeing the grass we walk on, seeing every side of a round world. You'll even see God around. Feeling each color of every truth, God will speak right to us. We will find everybody doing the same thing differently for the same reason. As God guides us, as God guides every other living thing that surrounds us, being back in the Garden of Eden, the kingdom of heaven, Jesus' thought was within, will now be on earth as it is in heaven. By reaching in, we can reach out. By sharing what is within us about, we will take it out. Peace and love. Bye.
Well, there you have Roger's poem. And This video is one that we've created differently than I've ever done before. He's actually doing the work of piecing his poem together with the beginning part of our discussion, which I normally do, and adding his poem, and now I'm adding an end piece to conclude the poem and the video for today. I want to thank Roger for his extraordinary work in doing some of the technical stuff that I have no clue how to do. So thank you folks for listening, and as always, namaste.